Welcome to the Borderlands Trail and Ultra Running Podcast. I am stoked that you are here. Borderlands. All right, we're having the time of our life doing this. I mean it. Like, you grind, you go hard, you come up with ideas, you try and do media. A lot of people trying to do media. And there's this sometimes where you're thinking about, how can we grow? And there's sometimes where you're just thinking like, I'm just happy right now. I'm just enjoying this right now. And I think with what Brian and I have been doing with Bad Runners Take, we're kind of just finding this lane right now. Yes, it'd be more fun to be in the same room together. That's maybe the next major opportunity for he and I. But right now, we're just having fun with Bad Runners Take. And today, Brian is on my dude Tommy Lewis, That's Runnables podcast. They talk about Will Googe. Will Googe gave a shout out to them on it, which was awesome for us. We are fans of Will and his work, and as he's trying to do the Transcon across Australia. So we're just having fun. And today's going to be no different. We might hit some cliche topics, but I hope now we're at the point where we have your trust to know that we're not going to approach a cliche topic in a cliched way. So we are going to talk about Cocodona today. We got the states debates. We just had Karl Meltzer, old speed goat, on the podcast with us. We're going to relive some of that because it's notable. He dropped so many interesting things that we want to bring some of those to surface. We got Joe Corcione coming up on the states debates. There's just a lot. We're moving quickly, and today's going to be no different. So here we go. Welcome to Bad Runners Take.
It's a bad runner's take. It's a bad runner's take. It's a bad runner's take. He's the Kipchoge of running.
All right. I'm here as a bad runner who has bad takes, and Wolfie's here as a good runner who has bad runner's takes. Wolfie, welcome. I'm just going to come right out of the gates and ask this. When are you going to commit to a race? Because I'm dying to see you toe the line somewhere, because you're running 20 miles, 8-minute miles through the wilderness. Like, when are you going to race?
Yeah, I don't know, man. At this point now, I think it's just more fun to keep teasing you. So
I respect the hell out of you just being able to train like that without a race. But man, I think it'd be fun to see you toe the line.
Yeah, no, I'm chomping at the bit. That's why, I want to be primed and ready.
What do you need? What do you need to, like? Is it the perfect race? Do you got them? Are they swirling in your head? How are we going to get there?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just in a season right now where, like, I don't want to commit just because a lot of things are going on, with the family, and and then it's getting into like the summer. So now, like, my local options are going to be night races, loops in the desert. Not really hot on those. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's one that's coming up here this Saturday, but it would be like a sub ultra distance. I would just go run maybe like a 10-mile race. Well, we'll see. I mean,
yeah. Well, I'd love to see you out in a 50K or further, maybe this fall when it's cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at October. October is a treasure chest of options out here in the desert. You've got saddles, which I've always wanted to run since it was launched. You've got man versus horse, which once I saw that was on my list. And then you got javelina, which is a spectacle. So I'm going to avoid that this year. So definitely flipping a coin, I think, between saddles and man versus horse.
Man versus horse is bucket list. It's one of the only races that's a bucket list to attend. I just want to see that spectacle. So I went on a run in London the other day with someone who showed up wearing a man versus horse shirt. I was so stoked on it.
Yeah, the buckle's incredible. They've really nailed it with the way they do the buckle design. So yeah, that one's definitely on the list. But I mean, there's a lot of guys that we know just through the community that are going to be at Saddles this year. So
okay,
I might just be peer pressured to go there and meet a lot of the people from the community that'll be there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Arizona, again, Cocodona 250 could be, like I said, that could be one of the cliche things to cover. If you watch the coverage, you got a lot out of it. But if you've listened to a few podcasts after, you got a lot out of that. But what do we have to offer to the Cocodona 250 post game show? I mean, I think on some levels it's simply a celebration of it. I think that now Cocodona to me feels like the third must, like, can't miss race of the year now, up there with Western States and UTMB. Like it's already kind of creeping up, but now it feels official to me. They can't miss it, but I don't know. What do you have to say post Cocodona 250?
Yeah, I mean, my whole angle of attacking the topic or approaching it is just looking at the live stream. Performative wise, it speaks for itself. We all know what Dan Green did out there. Rachel Edgerkin, incredible performances. the Max dropout, the Finn rivalry we can dive into, but
Yeah.
really wanted to start with the live stream and kind of just the missed opportunities that I think they're leaving, fruit on the tree basically to just die, to grow the sport, to create a better, more rich and engaging, live stream for the first, 3 to 5 days while the majority of the eyes are glued to the YouTube. And it's no shade or knock on any of the personalities. So I preface this by saying like every person, that was on the microphone, did a great job, to the best of their abilities that were afforded to them. A lot of times they're just reacting in live to the stuff that we're seeing. That's part of the problem is I think it takes more of like, Mountain Outhouse production, being a little more proactive in producing, and scripting an actual schedule of events and talking points and storylines. You think about like Ironman Kona, right? And, they have the ability to tell stories, across the front of the pack, middle of the pack, back of the pack, and then, kind of charitable stories that like tear at your heartstrings. And they tell those stories from like minute one. And this race certainly has that. You had all the excitement and firepower up front with the elites, but then you had stories that were like, heartwarming, like AJW. He was on here on debates, and he's beloved by the Aravaipa community. I just don't know why they didn't spend more time talking specifically about, his 250 journey. He was signed up for Sedona 125s with his buddy. His buddy passes away and he decides, you know what, as a ultra-minded trail runner, I'm going to double the 125. I'm going to run it with him in his honor, with his bib. So he's running Cocodona 250 with his, his late friend's bib on his backpack. Like we could have spent like, 30 minutes, talking about this, when the live stream numbers were at their highest. I mean, we have the 30 minutes. We're not missing much that you can't do this.
Yeah.
You had Cam Haines, who's a huge figure in the sport. I mean, you talk about carrying a big audience. There were a lot of people there that, came because of Cam Haines. So do a little bit of a feature on him, show him some love. The sport's going to get, if the rising tide lifts all ships, Cam Haines is a pretty massive tidal wave of eyes. So, what do you think? That's a lot there that I just loaded on you, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. Okay. I mean, I think the preface is that we should everyone who consumed it and cares, like has a voice to say what they think about it. We happen to have a microphone. I don't necessarily know how to get it there, though I think I could take a stab at it. And that is the programming piece, the production piece, like serving up talking points. Hey, if you're going to do a static camera for the overnight feed, so for us in Europe, and again, granted, it was 1,000 people on the feed, 700 to 1,000. We're getting a static shot of the aid station, an aid station that has no runners in it, just has volunteers doing their thing, which is impressive, but it's all we have. So that's really just like background noise for the chat. So we were just chatting during that. But let's say even for like Primetime America, being on there, and you got a range from, until first place, until Dan finished, you had a range of 3,000 to 7,000, 8,000 people in there. Could you have talking points? Could you have something not scripted, but just like, hey, here's 100 things. The second that it's dead, go to this. Like if you feel dead. And so you got to have someone in the chair who has a understanding that that dead space is not endearing to most people. Some really solid introverts like the dead space. They don't need to hear sound all the time. In golf, if it's silent in golf coverage, it's maybe because it's a moment that's like appropriate to be quiet. Someone's taking a putt, someone's driving, so you don't want to make noise. So then that quiet makes sense. The awkward pauses are just a little bit too much for me. And so I think, my 8-year-old daughter comes in and I'm watching and I'm glued to it. Again, I'm in the fold, the coverage could be 10 times worse. I'm not going anywhere. I'm in the fold, but my daughter walks in and she's like, this is so boring. And I'm like, yeah, I want my daughter to walk up and be like, oh, what's going on? And I realize for 250 miles, you're not going to get it the whole time, but yes. So stories. And okay, let's say you've got 5 to 10 minute documentaries that you could throw to at any given time. And you could do a screen and screen if you need to. Like, okay, here's AJW's story. Here's a 10-minute documentary on AJW and his buddy Rob, I think was his name, Rob Wilson, possibly. And here's that story. And you can cut to that thing like 7 or 8 times throughout the course of the coverage. And the idea is just like movement. And when you have people on the mic, like just saying things of value to the audience. Now, again, there's a thing that I delineate here, and that is there's the people who are already in the fold, who want the coverage to be for them. And that means it can be just about anything, like I said. But then there's also these people who are on the fence, who pop in, feel the boring nature of it at times, and they leave. And I want to see those. I want to do more to make those people stay, because the more they stay, the more money comes into it, and the exponentially better the coverage gets.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's never going to be building out more accessibility to the elites. Like, I don't care how many follow cams you have, the pace at which the 250 is ran, most often than not, it's not going to be riveting to where just visually seeing the race unfold is going to keep the person on the fence tuned in.
Yeah.
Like, it's not Formula One, right? Or, even golf, has more action as far as like, you can always cut to somebody on the course, hitting a meaningful shot. Like, you can't cut to a 250 and see something meaningful for 60 hours. And so, again, that's why I think you have to have these stories ready to be queued up and talked about, or just debate. I mean, I know everything costs money, and I'm ignorant to this. I don't know how much it would cost, but we're in year 5 now? This was year 5 of Cocodona.
Yeah.
A graphics package would do wonders, for the live chat to stop asking, and the live tracker to stop being such a thorn in everybody's side. Just, what does every live broadcast have in sports? A scoreboard, a leaderboard, like, it's just 101 at this point. Just give us a graphics package. Within that graphics package, you can have like those AJW special trackers, and you can then reference, hey, AJW into this aid station. He's doing it, you know what I mean? And then that allows you to have a 5-minute conversation with your broadcast partner about AJW, hey, Cam Hanes on the move. Look at this, man. The guy's undeniable, got a new book out, right? Like, these are just things that we see as commonalities in other sports.
Yes.
And so we have to ask ourselves, if it's not being done in year 5 at Cocodona, why?
Yeah.
And I go back to this analogy, and then I'll see what you say. Just like prize money, Aravaipa doesn't have to do anything to offer prize money to sell its races out, and they don't have to do anything to change the live stream to sell out Cocodona. It'll sell out the minute it goes live. So are we seeing this as just a situation of they don't have to, and so they don't?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Like the leaderboard, how simple would that be? I mean, for the love of God, for the current graphics package that we're getting of those little pieces in each of the corner, you could have an Excel spreadsheet and just put a camera on a computer screen of the Excel spreadsheet. That at least serves the audience so we can know what it is. But this also, to me, points to the live coverage was an authority on nothing. It was a go-to for no new information. And you pointed this out when we were going back and forth during the race. It's not dispensing intel to the viewer. It's allowing us to see things, but we were all on our own to go to the website, and you will take pressure off that website. I don't understand how it crashed so much. You could see in real time they were working behind the scenes trying to fix that, but it was just constantly crashing. You'll take the pressure off of it.
That's why I'm not signed up for a race. I was going to do one during Cocodona, but I couldn't ever get onto Aravaipa to register. So,
This is a real life consequence. We don't get to see you race because the website
and then
crashes.
I didn't have the incentive anymore. I didn't have the motivation. So when the site launched back up, I was already over it.
Well, I mean, and so point being, and I'm really serving up your point from our exchange is, man, give the people on screen special information, and not to withhold it from us, but give us so much information, but then also give them the next level, have the leaderboard up there, let them be telling us things that we didn't know. I think that's not a lot to ask, but I guess that shouldn't even be my point. I don't care if it's a lot to ask. If it is or it isn't, I mean, we'd like that. That would be useful. That'd make it even more critical.
Yep. And then the other point that I was realizing here during this race, more so than any others, is that, sometimes you see these like massive leaps in technology, and then you realize that, like, oh man, we kind of left something behind, that this new leap really isn't as cleaned up as it needs to be, so it's not as effective, right? And so what I'm saying here is that, like, because we took such a massive leap and went all in with live streaming, I Run Far no longer has to invest in boots on the ground coverage.
Yeah.
And I think at Cocodona, it highlights that we still need both. Like the live stream technology is not there yet, where we can't not rely on the services that I Run Far had done before with, being their boots on the ground and being able to give, actual updates when the technology isn't there to do it, right? Like Starlink or the cams go down or whatever the case is, right? Like if you have actual infrastructure laid out like I Run Far would have, you can still provide a more quality product than what we're doing now without it.
Yes, I think the perfect next step would be to bring back I Run Far at its apex of having 6 or 7 people in the field at any given 100-miler, at the time tweeting, posting on X, like, here's what's happening in real time. It was the go-to authority. I think that's it's obviously still needed. But what would be cooler is that in fact, they're only just sending it to the live cast, and so they're telling us things. I think that's interesting and helpful as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
All that to say, again, I'm in the fold. Like I would have been thrilled with 10x less of a product and still glued to it. I sometimes just more enjoy refreshing the runner page just to see where their GPS is than watching the coverage. And that's more me, because I've been a Texas Tech fan and they weren't on TV forever in Salt Lake City. So all I ever had was ESPN, like the broadcast where you're watching, like, it looks like you're kind of watching Tecmo Bowl, and the ball will just like go across a little fake field. And that's how I watch entire football games. So I kind of like watching like that, but I don't think many do.
Yeah. I'd love to see like crew cam too. You know what I mean? I think like in races like this and even Western states, it'd be even more fascinating. Like you just have somebody that's, part of the coverage that just rides along with the crew. And when they think that it's like at a good place and you got good cell coverage, like in the car, like, let's just see what they're talking about. Let's listen in. And I think that would be a great aspect, because, part of the 95, we all are crewing at some point for someone, or we understand the crew that we have out there, but we never get to see what it's like while we're racing, like the day that they're having. And so they're every bit as much part of the story as the racer is. So why not have like a person that can just follow along? It seems like an easy one, low hanging fruit. It's a controlled environment. Just something to take the pressure off the booth commentators from always having to carry the load of entertaining the live chat.
Yeah, it sets them up to fail, to make it
8 hours of responsibility.
Yes, and it sets them up to fail. 8 hours of talking responsibility without a ton of talking points, relying on the group chat. Which again, I don't mind that group chat interaction to a degree. It's fun. It's nice to throw something in the chat and then hear Troy say it. It's validating. That's cool.
Yeah.
But that doesn't scale, and that's that doesn't work forever.
Right. So it was good. Another great race. It had some exciting moments. Some. You had the Courtney DNF. You had the Max DNF late because of just a whole series of body malfunctions and shutdowns.
Yeah.
I think in his heart, he would have loved to have, come back at any point during the race and finish. But it was that severe that he couldn't risk just even the last 18 miles or so, less than 20 miles from the finish line. Ugh.
Yeah, but your Finn versus Max take, it was fun. It really was. If you hadn't, here's the perfect snapshot for why we need narratives. If you hadn't set that up, we would have been looking at the leaderboard over and over again and not curious about that. So it gave us the ability to be curious about who's in first, which that's an intuitive thing. We care about who's at the top, who's in the top 3, in the top 10 overall. But that gave us something else to look to and to watch. So it's just an added layer. It's a case for building additional narratives into the race that aren't concerned with first place. We weren't thinking Finn or Max were going to get first place. We were just saying, hey, it's a race within a race and keep your eyes on it. And they ended up being either next to each other or like only one person apart for a majority of the race until, of course, Max DNF'd.
Yeah. I think I said at one point, it seems like they've been fighting in a phone booth for the last, 200 miles. It was, it was fascinating to see that come to fruition. Right. Yeah. So, but yeah, Max is a polarizing character. One of the things I think that was a theme of this year's live stream was just how divisive it would get at certain times when, the chat would either ask about Max too often. Cam Hanes became, a point of contention. At one point in Whiskey Row, I think Hillary said something about, somebody asked if Joe Rogan was out there crewing for Cam Hanes, and the chat warriors lit up saying, keep him out of our sport. We don't need Joe Rogan, right? And so you could just see the divisiveness within the live chat, which we're sort of doing a great job of being the voice of acknowledging that. And, we've been talking about that. I've been talking about that a lot. Some of the things I talked about with Tommy, this kind of culture of like not accepting certain people with a certain physique or a certain attitude. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, we're not seeing that go away or die anytime soon.
Yeah. Worth noting, not that surprised to anyone, Dan Green. I think the greatest stat of acknowledging what Dan accomplished is he went into it with about 1,800 followers on Instagram, and now he's at 10,500. So that is, and he's relatively unsponsored. His local running store that he works at, Robert's Running, and he has some level of sponsorship with the feed, whatever that's called.
Right.
Of course, amazing what Dan did. I think what's fun to watch is what will he look like as a professional athlete 6 to 12 months from now. That'll show the power of Cocodona, the true power of Cocodona. Does this get him a sponsorship for crushing the course record? If it does, then Cocodona belongs in the discussion, in my opinion, as alongside UTMB and Western States, because you win it, you get paid, you get real life money from a sponsor, you get people pursuing you. Dan is marketable, but I think it'll be interesting to see, can Cocodona take someone who's more or less an amateur in terms of sponsorship dollars, and does a victory like he put on display, like the quality that he put on display, lead to money? I think that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think the answer is always yes, as so long as the athlete knows how to capitalize on it.
Yes.
And I wouldn't have thought so with Dan, but then you see him at the finish line, having a Coors Light as he's coming into Flagstaff, and then he shotguns beer at the finish line. So yeah, those are the types of things that just, ingratiate you to the 95.
Yes.
And then you get memed. And when you get memed, you've made it, right? Yeah. And so, it said something like, ultra runner runs 250 miles to have the shittiest beer on earth, or something like that. Right? There's a picture of him holding up the Coors Light. So,
well, I reached out to Ryan on the crew. I was like, did one of you seed that for him? Like, cause that is a great shot. And Coors, think about what instantly came to mind was Jamil and Chipotle and all that sort of stuff. It's like, oh man, some marquee stuff for Coors. I would love to see Dan get a Coors sponsorship. That would be hilarious. And, a non-endemic sponsor coming in. I thought it was brilliant. I thought the images were great, and Coors couldn't have paid for that.
Yeah. If we start seeing an uptick at Coors Light finish lines now, that'll be wild.
Oh, my next race of note, I'm certainly going to slam a Coors. I'm going to shotgun a Coors, and because Dan did, I want to be like Dan.
So are we saying Cocodona now is the best ultra to launch a beverage? I mean, they put Flota on the map, and now they're putting Coors Light on the map in a way that's never been done before.
Yeah, that it is. I miss Flota.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think maybe important to note that all that same stuff for Rachel Intrican, not sponsored, second time winning. So is Cocodona now marquee enough where she could end up with money? Again, for both of them, the question is are you sponsorable beyond speed? I've always said speed has nothing to do ultimately with your sponsorship. It's your likability. It's the ability to place their brand on you and then to increase sales because they've placed their brand on you. Can that happen with both of them? I think with Cocodona being more marquee every year, let's see if it can produce the two winners with some sort of sponsorship. That'd be interesting. Did they get prize money? Do we know?
No. They had some really neat woodshop trophies that were, they look good. They're not particle board, look like they were a pine or, some sort of high quality
nice pine
hardwood. Yeah. They're solid.
Yeah, I think that's good though too.
Yeah. Rachel, like Dan, she executed the race with nothing but a smile and joy, and seemed like she just had herself an incredible race. So yeah, I would think that brands would be interested. Well, I would like to see if for the women, if there's any trickle down to the Tara Dower effect. Like
Mm.
she landed a massive contract with Ultra, got a lot of, fanfare and publicity about that contract,
Yeah.
similar, in the sense that, Rachel goes out here and finishes fourth overall, just off the podium, course record, big race, Cocodona. Like you would think that there would be some brand, maybe not with the same size of contract, but a meaningful contract for her. If women are really coming into the
Yeah.
sport with neutrality with the men's side. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. Time will tell. Okay. Next, we had Karl Speedgoat Meltzer on the show last week. It was just a treat and a pleasure on every level. I knew the guy had personality. I'd interacted with him, like I said, at races, but he was an open book. He knows a lot of the inside stuff, and he happens to see the world very similarly to us. And he is direct, and just the main difference is that a lot of these people that we have some hot takes for or some critical takes for, they're actually his friends, and it sounds like he said it to their faces. Similar things that we would say. One of the interesting things that he threw out there was that Hardrock is, I think they allow like 119 runners. They reduced it from like 121 to 119. I remember a couple of years ago, something silly like that, because of runner experience. And Karl said, just so you know, they have 220 spots available on their permit. They reduce it by 100 so that they can stay small. And he said, but they give the media 200 passes to be on it. So they're saying, hey, we don't want to plug this up. We don't want to make, we want this the perfect running experience. However, we're going to have more media on than we are runners. And it just feels, it feels funny. And he had interesting comments about UTMB, but let's start there. Did you have any thought? I mean, he said it so, he spat out so many interesting facts so quickly. I had to go back and listen and process. And that was one of the ones that stuck out.
Yeah, it was a bit of a demoralizing debate. Here I was thinking I was quite original and bringing fresh takes, and then I'd met Karl and realized everything I thought was just a weaker, diluted version of Karl. So anytime anybody, says, hey, Wolfie's out over his skis and he's talking too much trash, I'll just remember like they haven't listened to Karl yet. So
yeah.
He's my trail father. I'm now his
your trail dad.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Like I had to double check with you exactly what he was saying to make sure I interpreted it right. So I'm glad that we're going to spend a minute talking about it. And my first thoughts went to like investment, like as an investor, like you have a fiduciary duty to like make decisions that are best for your investors, your shareholders. And like, when you think of the context of Hardrock, like wouldn't the runners that are wanting to enter be those shareholders? Like as an RD, don't you have a duty to do best by them? And in this example, it's the exact opposite. Like, I don't know that there's any case that can be made that 119 is this arbitrary number that creates a runner experience that's better than 180. You know what I mean? Or at least maybe just like shareholders have to vote, maybe we go and ask the community if they think, hey, we can do 220, but here's some things that we think might be, sacrificed or diluted because of the increased field size. What do you guys think? Right? Like get some feedback. And if the trail community agreed, like, hey, no, let's do 170 and see how it feels, or 130. But like just to arbitrarily just say no and leave people on the wait list to create this kind of, I mean, that's gatekeeping at its worst, right?
Yes. Yeah, I the reason that I hate it, okay, if I think about the event in and of itself, I could take or leave the 120, even knowing that there's 220. I could take or leave it. But if that was my bucket list race, like some people have for Western states, and I knew that in my 10 years of trying to get on there, they left 1,000 people on the table. I mean, I hate that. If that's my race, I hate that. It's the same thing with Western states of knowing, okay, they are maxing out their permit, but the thing that we go back and forth on, and then it was refreshing to hear, Trail Dad say that, Granite Chief Wilderness, go around it, figure it out, go another way. It's not the same course. It's going to upset the traditionalists. Who cares about the traditionalists? Because think about the person who's been having to keep their 100-milers up for the last 10 years to get their 3,000 tickets in there, whatever it takes in order to get it. They've spent $1,500 a year all in on their 100-miler for 10 years, $15,000. and you're not fighting for them, like you're actually more so celebrating the brand that you've built that is exclusionary by nature. You're not fighting for the people who are giving their lives to be on your course at your starting line. I hate that.
No, I hate it. And you want to talk about runner experience? Hey, how about I'd rather run the ultra at 36 than 46? Don't you think my runner experience would have been maybe a little bit fresher? I would
Yes.
have been a little bit, I would have had a better fitness or, freshness
Yeah.
at 36 than 46, or, 42 versus 52. Like, it just keeps going on and on, right? Like
Right.
the longer you have to wait to run the race, it's not always the better version of yourself. So, I mean, you
Yeah.
could, two sides
I,
of the same coin, but yeah.
I love that Karl even said, it's not even that great of a course. And it was just such a backhanded, not backhanded. It was just such a, because again, he was rifling off so many interesting things to me. And then he said, you can go around Grand Chief Wilderness. It doesn't matter. It's not that interesting of a course. There are
Right.
better courses in America to run. And so then he
Right.
makes a point that I thought was super interesting, that once he made it, I thought, I kind of see that. He said, so we made the case when you had or you did with the states debates with Troy, of saying that, yeah, maybe Western States is vulnerable. It can't just rest on its laurels because someone else will swoop in and take it. And I think the elephant in the room is that we're saying UTMB is the one who's going to swoop in and take it. Well, Karl said, yeah, I don't think it can be UTMB because they don't even embrace who they are inherently. You're not even allowed to say Ironman when you're around UTMB and meetings. Like, you can't embrace the juggernaut that owns you and that steers you, the majority, like, I don't know, most of you. And they're also so it's like fixated on sustainability to the point where I feel like they shame their fans. Like, you've met fans here in America who say, "Oh, I want to go to UTMB, but I don't like the carbon footprint of flying from here to there, so I'll never go." Meanwhile, Chamonix is packed. You can't even move when you're in Chamonix, because I flew there from Salt Lake to enjoy it because there was an extra seat available, because all the people, the diehards who are more diehard than me, weren't going because UTMB is saying, we don't even want car sponsors. We don't want anything. We're so fixated on sustainability that it's to the detriment of the race. So Karl was saying, yeah, it could not be Western States, and it's also probably not UTMB. So then I just wonder, my mind has been wondering, like, oh, who is it? Who could it be then that takes
Yeah.
over?
Yeah. Yeah. I think he was, he was definitely, neutral, with his critiques and criticisms. He's
Yeah.
fair on every side of the conversation, whether it was Western States or UTMB. I don't know. I mean, I think I think UTMB is in a much stronger position, with their board members, with the people who are making decisions at the top, to be able to carry the mantle. They do have prize money. They do have, a ton of races all over the world. So while they are saying, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth, is what we're getting at, that yes, they put sustainability at the forefront because they know it's what this community is requiring of them. It's kind of like just greenwashing the topic, because they still know that the amount of travel that it takes to get to their, global list of races is not very on brand with their sustainability efforts.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like Karl said, in the United States, if they ever had to go all in, like, they're going to have to embrace the Nike mentality that I mentioned in the podcast, as far as, making no apologies, being a bit brash, and that's, I think that was the beauty of the debate that we had with using Nike. It was a nice villain to use, in order to shake up just how stale things are. And Hoka, being the title sponsor, hasn't done much of anything to move.
And we had a lot of great comments. One of them, which got me super excited, someone said, "Why don't the three of you, including Karl, me, you, and Karl, why don't you all come up with the 100-miler that takes over America?" And I thought, I'd like that.
Yeah.
Karl can clearly bring the eyes and ears. I got to imagine, after getting to know him on that small level, that he's also likable. He didn't deliver it in a way that was unlikable, but I guess I don't know enough. Is he a disliked figure? It's hard to dislike him with his resume and his like interpersonal skills and charm, but the stuff that he says is unlikable. I got to imagine that some people would, but what he did with Speed Goat was special. he never ran it, that was his joke, is that I would never run this race. That's why I'm the race director. It's such a hard course, 12,000 feet across the 50K. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be interesting to see him get in a position where he pulls together, he brings in Hoka, asks something special of them and unique of them to come in and be the marquee event, to just take it away from Western States and UTMB. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. And again, yeah, I mean, big advocate again for prize money,
Yes.
acknowledging that he's been, close to the tip of the spear at the sport, during, his prime time running years. And so he understands, the commitment, the dedication, the time that gets put into these races, and just the overall, wear and tear that you got to go and empty the tank when you're racing. And so, yeah, these guys should be getting paid, prize money. I don't know. I think it's just a bit insulting and disgusting to the sport, to the individuals, that there isn't prize money, across these golden ticket and Western States events.
Yeah. I mean, okay. And here's something fun to think about. I mean, is this true? Are we 6 weeks out from Western States? So
yeah,
we are closing in. And part of our goal, for those of you like, why are you guys talking about Western States again? It's just that exact thing. Imagine, we've been going about 50 miles an hour. We're about to start to go a little bit faster, but we still got 6 weeks. And my point is that we've been traveling toward Western States for a long time, to where we don't have to sprint at the end to do all of this work that we've been doing. The point is that you and me and our listeners are going to be more ready than anybody else for Western States on the high level, because you've blown it up so high in terms of the things we talked about, Hoka versus Nike, and is Western States poised to be dominant 5 years from now, and all of the stuff that we've talked about with AJW. So where's that going now over the next 6 weeks? I mean, is Joe Corcione going to be joining to talk about course records?
Yeah, that's the plan. I think, we had some scheduling difficulties there just around Arizona Monster. And then I think his wife was running during Cocodona.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got to get back on the horn with him and dial in the date. But yeah, that's the plan. The topic, I think, will be fun. Just debating over, Jim and Courtney's course records, which one has, the most longevity to it, or which one is most vulnerable, to being dethroned on the course record side. So I think he wants to take Courtney's, and I'm going to take Jim's. So that'll be nice. I think I got the upper hand. So, Joe's a debater, so he must have something tactical here that he's trying to, loop me into a landmine, or
I hope so.
One. So
yes, that will be fascinating to moderate and to observe. But then after that, we're getting into the 2025 field and starting to talk about this race. And I think what I love about this, just as a small example, the week before you said, hey, look at Max and Finn, watch that. That's interesting. Is that we're going to really try and turn the volume up on that. And it's still taking shape, but we want to put narratives in place and seed narratives into the trail running community that will make it just fascinating on a deeper level. Of course, M1 through M3, or, through M10, F1 to F10, interesting, obvious race. But there's some races within the race that could be interesting. There's a certain profile of runner versus another profile of runner that could be interesting. But we're going to build it to where it's wildly fascinating. And then the week of, my goal was to be there for Roby House, fell through, just to be candid. And so, not everything's polished. I just couldn't pull the money together for Roby House to execute to my dream. Paris Fashion Week is the same weekend, which is really becoming a running event as much as anything. A lot of running brands are going to be here. So I'm going to be doing Paris Fashion Week coverage and Western States coverage from Paris, kind of like I did with Cocodona, but just up to the next level, where Brian and I are going on live. But we're going to really dial in and do something special for that. So we are running downhill towards that, and, just everything in the field. And I don't know if you have any specifics right now as you start to think about shaping the discussions about the 2025 field.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's what I was going to say is, like, the whole point in this whole states debate and, covering it from the angle we are, is that I was sick and tired of kind of the way that Western States was being covered as a fan. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get, again, Free Trail doing their version of what they think's best for the sport, which is, a dozen or so athlete interviews that are going to be, very contrived or regurgitated information, right? What's your training look like? How many carbs? What's your fueling strategy? Topical heat, topical cooling, or whatever it is. and rinse and repeat from somebody else. And they're just going to go down the list of the people who are, poised to have a day. And then you're going to get single track, doing a long track tape with their predictions. And, it'll be one episode dedicated to Western States before the race. And it's like the race is much bigger than that. It is the Super Bowl of the United States 100-mile distance. And so we thought it deserves to have a longer runway, longer conversations. And I think that if we've done our job well, by the time that these other interviews and episodes come out, you're going to see the contrast and maybe the bit of a difference and be like, oh, I get it now. I see what they were doing. You know what I mean? Like, so even when we get into more the granular conversations around 2025, it's still going to be in the unique voice that we always want to bring. It's not just going to be, how many grams of carbs are we going to be able to see these guys take down? We're going to do it still in a fun manner. You guys can always count on that. And again, I'm sick and tired of those 7-minute interviews. Again, I think I Run Far did great with those. They were proven, they were professional, they were great. And if we just continue to delegate that to I Run Far, then maybe it allows, Free Trail and others to be more creative in what they do. They don't just have to copy what I Run Far had done for a decade plus in the sport. So the rant there, but I had to say it.
It's a good point. I mean, this is our second time to mention I Run Far in this. Like, it cannot be overstated how big of an impact they had, even down to the way that our present upper echelons are doing pre-racing. You're exactly right. They're doing it like I Run Far did, which is a nod to the impact of I Run Far, but it's not the evolution that we need.
Right.
And hopefully that's what's coming.
Yeah. So this year, I think, one of the unique things, then I talked to you yesterday about it, or this weekend on my 20-miler, I was having just a bunch of good epiphanies light off in my mind. And I was thinking about setting it up as like Western States is where professional talent goes to become a made man, right? Like you look at like a Hans Troyer, right? And so Western States is his opportunity to have himself a day and really, up the contract that he can either renegotiate with Ultra or sign with Hoka or another larger brand, right? Yeah. So let's build that narrative out. Let's talk about these guys in a way of like, it's Jim Walmsley, Hayden Hawks, who already are made men from what they've done at Western States and UTMB for a long period of time, versus these to be made men, or we'll find a different term for them. But I think that's really what Western States encapsulates, is like, it's a race inside the race. It's the people, it's the haves and the have-nots,
Yes. The haves and the have-nots. That's perfect. Because, is Jim as hungry as Hans Troyer? I don't know if he is, but I think it's fun to think about, like, okay, someone who's trying to stay in that have and someone who's dying to get in the a have-not that's trying to get in the haves. Like, to me, as a perpetual lifelong fan of underperforming teams, I mean, I'm always rooting for that underdog. I think it'd be fascinating to really shape that have-not versus the haves argument. I think that's a really, really fun, because I could just imagine race day, and maybe that something like that maybe starts to settle in by hour 4 or hour 5, like really take shape. Like, okay, we have a have-not that's going to dominate or not, but I'm glued to that narrative within the narrative. And if we can put together some version of bets around it, or, I mean, not like with actual money, but like somewhere where we're able to show, like, hey, are you pulling for the haves or the have-nots? And, how's that race going to progress and all that sort of stuff. There's just fun things that we can look at that just make us even more obsessed, to the point where right now, when I consume Western States, I'm consuming it in a way that's like, okay, I'm doing stuff, but I've got my phone, I'm going to check in. This level of stuff, to me, takes it to the next level, where I need to have my butt on the couch in front of the TV, because this is something worth looking at for 14 hours.
Yeah, totally. Because it's kind of, guys like Jim and Hayden, they've already got massive bonuses structured into their contract. So for them, they're racing for legacy, but they are racing for a tangible bonus for winning that race. Whereas somebody, again, like Hans, is racing for the potential to demand that, right? And so it's like, pay out.
What we're saying about Dan Green and Cocodona, same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, those will be fun to look at. And then, yeah, that's about it. I mean, we'll keep building out again, more narratives, more storylines, rivalries. There's always going to be we still have, we've kind of left David on the back burner,
Yeah.
Roach,
Yeah.
but he just went out at Quad Rock 50 and smashed a course record and absolutely, I mean, the way he finished, he looked like he was as fit as could be. So the big Alta DNF and ankle rolls behind him, that's a fantastic result, as we roll into 6 weeks out. And so
Love it.
we can start queuing back up the Roach orchestra and see if we can rile up the fan base. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you listen to Boulder Boys, Boulder Boys podcast, shout out them, because I've always said, if you want to see these like rivalries and these, narratives take shape, then the elites have to play into it as well. They've got to give us some of the sound bites to talk about. And shout out Boulder Boys, because if you pay attention when you listen to their podcast, they're not big Roach fans. You know what I mean? Like they respect the talent, but they don't like the way he goes about it. And they don't embrace him as like one of their Boulder guys that, counts, against the Salt Lake City rivalry, so I don't think they're at all too pleased, or care too much about Roach winning the Quad Rock 50. And so that's just going to bleed into states. It's like, it's a healthy kind of indifference towards each other. And so we as the 95 and we as like, on the media side of it right now, we get to have fun playing with that because Boulder Boys is out there on their podcast platform, putting it out there for us. I love that stuff.
I think chips on shoulders aren't talked about enough. And I think that'll be a fun thing, a thread to pull here, is who's got a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
If David Roach also has a chip on his shoulder, that is crazy. That's I don't know how you beat that, with where he's at, with how he's performing. And if he feels like if he were to at all, receive that from the Boulder Boys, it's also cool for him to like ignore it. But if you receive like, oh yeah, you don't belong, you don't fit in, like you're not one of us.
You don't ignore it. You put that up in your training room. You know what I mean? Like you put up the picture of Seth and every other Boulder boy or everybody else that's,
because the chip on the shoulder is dangerous.
Yeah. You don't think Michael Jordan had his, rivalries, bookmarked in his mind? Like, he hated those guys more than he, loved winning, right? Like he wanted to beat and destroy them, not just win the game. You know what I mean? And so like, that's the mentality of these elites that we oftentimes don't talk about too much. And so, I love it. I mean, Roach has this whole swap, army behind him. So I don't think he ever feels like he's without support. Like he's got a massive fan base of people, that are encouraging him. And so, he's not like he's some sort of sympathetic, victim here. He's got a lot of people who root for him. His wife's an incredible athlete and constantly showering him with praise and laughing at his jokes. So yeah, dude, it's fun. It's okay to have these differences, at the top of the field.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, anything else before we wrap up?
That's it, man. Just a busy week. Exciting that we're going to roll into episode 4 of debates. And I don't know how many, we never like put a number on how many we thought we needed to have for it to be a successful series, but my goodness, I mean, if the Joe one can live up to the ones prior to so far, I think we've done well in how we've navigated through that. Because like you said, it's just always uncovered something new that we didn't know before, or, carried a conversation that was never going to happen if it wasn't on the debates platform.
Yeah. And I think we're learning also, like, how many states debates does it take to make, states more interesting? Because I want to roll this into UTMB. And then, this will be proof. Is Cocodona really the number 3 of the year? Then do we start to look at this for Cocodona? But learning here, and then maybe we do it at UTMB, because I think it'll be a blast, but time will tell.
Yeah, totally, man. It was another fun one.
All right, man. Let's do it again.